Hey everybody, Stage Left Audio Productions, and right now we're looking at the compressors that we use for our front of house system, and this is just a brief overview of the compressor and sort of what the controls on it do, and sort of how we set it up for our shows. Of course, how we set it up when we get started, and as the show moves along, we make minor adjustments, obviously for the best sound quality and control over the whole sound system. So we're going to get started, and as you can tell here as I'm talking, I'm actually talking into a microphone, and the compressor is responding as hoped. So in looking at it, it has an expander and gate on it. We don't normally use those. We have our own gates that we use that are independent of this compressor. The gates that we use are based on the frequency. We can hone in on what frequency we want the gate to open, and we do have the attack and release and hold times that we can't get on the DBX units. For the compressors, we use them in the subgroups. We find that we have a lot more control over the system as a whole if we use them in the subgroups instead of using them on the separate channels. So in looking at it, there we go, start talking, there we go. And the threshold part of it, if I was going to set this up for a vocal, the threshold of it, we'd probably start something there, a few dBs below what the system has been configured for. If this is at 0, well, they would have to be talking pretty loud to get something to come on, but we usually will start out here about 10 dB below. It allows the compressor to come on a little bit sooner. Gives a little bit better control over it. We set a ratio somewhere around maybe 3 to 1 or so. We don't want to set it too high, because if we find out we're setting it too high, we're actually would be taking away a lot of the dynamics of the person's vocal. We don't want too much compression. We want them, the vocalist, or the choir, if it may be, we want everything to come through as they want it to. And once again, the compression it's giving us control over the system and control over the dynamics. Okay, and with the ratio sort of, so we want some compression, but not too much, at least to start out with. And for vocals, we use the over easy feature on it, which smooths out the transition between when the compressor is basically functioning and when it's not. It gives a very natural compression into somebody's voice. It doesn't cut it off. Now, if this had been for drums, we don't use over easy for that at all. We want the attack to come through, but then we want it to compress. So for vocals, we're going to do an over easy. And for attack, we need a fairly fast attack when we want the compressor to operate. If it's too slow, you can get sort of a strange effects out of it, especially if you have somebody that sings very dynamically. And also, if it's a fast attack on the compressor, this can also function as, even though this compressor does have a limiter on it, it's also going to help control the limiting. This is like in case somebody drops a mic, some performers, they'll bang into the microphone, the stand goes over, the mic goes over. It can really damage a sound system pretty bad, if you get a good pop coming through. So we usually use a fairly fast attack time. Now the release time, we don't want the release time fast, because you can easily pick up when the person is done talking, because they'll talk and then it shuts off immediately. So usually on the vocals, we'll take something of a longer release time just to allow for a natural decay of their voice. So it's test 1 2, test 1 2. Okay, that's still maybe a little bit too slow. Test 1 2. Okay, that looks about right for natural decay. So then we'll just take our output. We always start it off at 0, see where we need to go from there. Okay, now let's say that we're going to do drums. We're doing a compression on drums. And basically, it can be sort of set up, I said not really the same way as vocals, but there are certain areas that can be set up sort of the same way. And once again, it all depends upon how loud the player is, the quality of the drums, the quality of the mic. The mics on the drum kit, are using overheads. There's a lot of variables involved in compressing in setting a compressor for doing drums. And once again, we use a compressor for the whole drum kit, and the threshold we'll probably set it probably about there, just like we did on the vocals, but we will not use the over easy. So we don't want that smooth transition. We want the impact of the kick. We need the impact of the toms when they're hit. Now on this, we're going to use the contour button, and what the contour does, it allows more bass signals to come through. And if you read the manual, the DBX manual on the contour button, it shows that it makes the unit less sensitive to low frequencies. But if you sort of flip that statement around, it actually turns around to, I'm just letting more bass signals through. So the compressor is going to ignore a lot of the bass signals. And this is what we want. So, and then ratio, we could probably sort of set a ratio maybe sort of high. So once again, a lot of variables depending on how good the player is. You know, do they have good stick control when they hit it? You know, position of the mics, the quality of the mics. And for an attack, we'll take a fairly fast attack on it. Actually, we could probably slow the attack down some. Because what we don't want is we don't want the compressor to turn on when the stick initially hits the drum. It's very important because if the attack is set too fast, you know, the compressor is immediately turning on when the stick hits the drum. We don't want that because that takes away from the snap. You know, we need that initial attack. We need that attack to come through that gives a whole good feeling of what the drum is. So basically, we're trying to control it so the drum, the sound of the drum is what it's supposed to sound like is coming through. So on an attack, we'll actually probably run a little bit of a slower attack on it. Let's see here. I know this is not a very good drum sound, but okay, did you notice here where it is being compressed to as compared to here if we did a fast attack? Okay, that's quite a bit of compression. So we probably want a slower attack time. We still want the compressor to compress, but we want it to allow the initial attack to come through. And then as far as the release, we actually want maybe a fairly fast release time because unlike the vocals, we don't care if to a certain point, we don't care how fast the compressor stops its functioning. We want it to stop functioning quickly so that it can be put back into a position that it can accept the next transient to come through so the compressor will work. Okay, and then as always, we're going to set our output. Here we go. We're going to set our output up. And once again, we always start at 0. That's a good place to start. Okay, now for a bass guitar, which we use a compressor on bass guitars, and on our system we assign a separate subgroup just for the bass guitar. And it's to set it's sort of like the drums. It's not too much of a difference in it. You know, we may set the threshold, and once again, it depends upon the quality of the instrument that's being played. It also has a lot to do with how the signal's getting out of the instrument. Is it going through just the DI, or is it going through the person's amplifier? You know, there's a lot of other variables involved with it. So once again, in setting a compressor for the bass guitar, what I'm showing you here is just a starting point. So then on our ratio, we probably, at this point, depend upon what's being played and how they're playing it. We probably don't want a ratio too strong to start out with. Once again, we want the attack. We want the attack on it, just like on the drums, to be slow, because we want that initial, right when they pull that string snaps back, we want that snap to come through before the compressor turns on. And then as far as releasing, to depending on how they're playing, we could take a pretty fast release. Once again, the output is set to 0. But on the release times, we just probably need to watch, and we probably need to listen to them, through a pre-fade listen as they're performing, to hear how they're playing. Are they playing consistently strong, or do they play very weak and then very strong? A lot of that has to do with what you're going to make your settings here. Once again, there are no settings that are a set it and forget it. That is impossible to do. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can do whatever you want, but the quality of the event is probably going to suffer, which is going to affect how the band's going to sound to the people that are watching them. And if people think the band's terrible, well, they're probably going to point fingers right back at you. So for a bass guitar, I probably start with maybe something like this, maybe a threshold a little bit lower. But once again, I'm just talking into this right now. I don't have any bass signals going to it, because some of these would probably be adjusted a little bit differently. All right, hope this short video has helped out.